The polished marble floors of the elite shooters club glistened under golden light, reflecting a world reserved for those born into legacy and fortune. At its center stood Ryan Dalton, a 5-time national champion, lowering his custom Remington rifle with the ease of someone used to winning. Applause erupted the moment his target was retrieved, another bullseye. Patrons dressed in designer shooting gear clapped more in admiration of his status than his skill. He offered a smirk not to the crowd, but to the giant scoreboard where his name glowed at the top. This was his domain, where reputation was more important than humility. Outside the glass doors, Sarah Collins, 35, clutched a worn leather purse and stepped nervously into the lavish interior. Her navy cardigan and faded jeans looked painfully out of place, drawing subtle glances from the front desk receptionist and the passing club members. There were no warm welcomes here, just quiet judgment. Sarah approached the counter and politely asked to register for the open practice session. The receptionist gave her a once-over and replied coldly, "Members only." Sarah hesitated, then unfolded a crinkled envelope. "I have a day pass." It was a gift. The receptionist's expression changed annoyance, then dismissal. But the barcode scanned green. Access granted. From across the room, Ryan caught sight of the newcomer. He nudged his friend with a half laugh. "Looks like someone took a wrong turn on their way to Walmart." Laughter rippled through the group. Sarah tried to ignore it, keeping her eyes on the floor as she moved toward the beginner's range. Whispers followed her. Nobody here wore department store shoes. Nobody here came alone. She settled quietly at the far end of the practice stools. With slow, deliberate care, Sarah placed her purse down and unwrapped a small cloth bundle. Inside was a standard Glock 19, practical, scratched and clearly used, but well maintained. She loaded the magazine with steady hands. The same hands that had once packed care packages held her husband's medals and folded a flag that now lived in a wooden box under her bed. Ryan and his crew moved closer, pretending to casually observe, but their amusement was obvious. This wasn't curiosity. It was sport. $10 says she can't even load the thing, one whispered. Another snorted. 10 says she thinks the safety's still on. But Sarah heard none of it. She stood in place, took a breath, and readied herself. Ryan wasn't content to watch. He walked up with a theatrical charm, pretending chivalry while dripping with condescension. "Excuse me, Ma'am. Are you sure you're in the right place? This isn't a knitting circle." The chuckles behind him grew louder. Sarah turned slowly, meeting his eyes without flinching. "I'm just here to practice," she said softly. Ryan's smirk returned. "Tell you what he said," pulling out his checkbook. "How about we make this interesting? $10,000. You hit the bullseye from 50 yards, I pay you. You miss, you leave, and never come back." A hush fell over those nearby. Sarah hesitated, not because of fear, but because something deeper stirred within her. She looked down at her left hand and gave her simple gold ring a small twist. The gesture meant nothing to them, but to her it meant everything. It was a signal to herself that she wasn't standing alone. She looked up and said calmly, "Deal." Ryan stepped back, crossing his arms smugly. His friends gathered, expecting a good laugh, but their laughter faded as Sarah moved into position. Her stance shifted, not clumsy, not nervous, but precise. Her shoulders squared, her arms aligned. Her breathing slowed into a deliberate rhythm. The Glock 19 rose in her hands, steady as stone. She squeezed the trigger, and the sharp crack echoed across the range. All eyes turned toward the target. The retrieval system hummed as it pulled the paper forward. One hole clean centered, a perfect bullseye. Silence fell. Ryan's smirk faltered. His friend leaned in, whispering, "Was that luck?" Ryan didn't answer. His jaw clenched. Madison Green, the club manager, who had been quietly watching from a distance, stepped forward. "That was an exceptional shot." "Ms. Collins," Sarah replied. Madison nodded. "Ms. Collins, would you care to try our advanced facilities? Clearly, you're not a beginner." Ryan's pride couldn't handle it. One shot doesn't make her a pro, he said loudly, regaining the attention of the crowd. He pulled out his checkbook again. Let's make it 50,000. 3 bullseyes, 75 yards. If you miss even one, you leave and admit it was all luck. Sarah could have walked away. She hadn't come for a show. But something about the way Ryan spoke, so certain, so arrogant, struck a nerve. Not just for herself, but for every person who had ever been underestimated because of their clothes, their gender, or their grief. She turned to face him. If I win, the money goes to the Veterans Support Foundation. The crowd buzzed. Some looked impressed, others skeptical, but Ryan just laughed. Fine. You won't win anyway. Sarah didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her calm wasn't performance, it was purpose. She wasn't here for money or recognition. She was here to keep a promise. And something told her the real battle had just begun. The sound of the shot faded, but in Sarah's mind it echoed into a memory. She was standing in a sun-drenched clearing outside Virginia Beach, the sharp tang of gunpowder in the air and the distant murmur of waves on the wind. Chief Logan Collins, her late husband, knelt beside her, adjusting her stance with gentle, calloused hands. Keep your elbow tucked, baby, like you're holding something you love. Logan had been more than a Navy SEAL sniper. He had been a legend in the special operations community, known for his precision patience and the call sign Spectre. But to Sarah, he was just Logan, the man who left sticky notes in her lunchbox and traced her cheekbone with quiet admiration. He taught her to shoot during his last extended stay stateside. It started as protection, a gesture of love in case he never came back. But over time, their lessons became something sacred, a language they spoke without words. When he died during a classified mission 3 years ago, Sarah buried more than a husband. She buried a world. His rifles were locked away. The range became a ghost town, and her hands, once so steady, refused to hold a weapon again. Until today. Until Ryan Dalton's arrogance and one crumpled day pass pulled her from the shadows. Back in the present, the air in the shooting range was electric. A crowd had gathered their chatter, now hushed in anticipation. Ryan leaned against a pillar, arms folded, amused smirk replaced by a tight-lipped stare. Sarah took her place at the 75-yard mark. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't acknowledge the stakes. Her focus narrowed to the 3 elements Logan always taught her: breath, body, barrel. She inhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger. The first shot rang out sharp and clear. The target came forward, a clean bullseye. Whispers ran through the crowd like wind through leaves. Ryan shifted uneasily. She took the second shot, this time faster, another bullseye. Now the crowd leaned in. Cameras came out. People were no longer laughing, they were holding their breath. For the third shot, Sarah twisted her wedding ring once. This one's for you, she whispered. The final shot landed. The bullseye was torn dead center, the paper fluttering slightly under its perfect symmetry. The silence broke into spontaneous applause. A few even stood. Madison's jaw dropped, but her eyes shone with admiration. Ryan's smirk was gone, replaced by disbelief. No way, Ryan barked, striding forward. That's not possible. No amateur walks in off the street and shoots like that. Sarah didn't flinch. She simply lowered the Glock and placed it neatly on the counter. Madison stepped in. Ryan, enough. You challenged her. She met the terms, in front of witnesses. She rigged something, he snapped. That gun, the sight lines. Something's off. Or maybe Madison replied, voice like steel. She's just better than you expected. But Ryan wasn't interested in reason. With a theatrical sweep of his hand, he addressed the crowd. Fine. Let's settle this for real. 1 week from today. 10 stations. Club-provided firearms. Real competition rules. Gasps and murmurs swept the audience. This was no longer about sport. It was war. Sarah looked to Madison, then to the faces of the people now waiting on her next move. She didn't come here for attention, but neither would she back down from it. I accept, she said simply, on one condition. If I win, the prize money still goes to the Veterans Support Foundation. Ryan nodded with a tight grin. And if you lose, you admit the truth. For the next 7 days, Sarah disappeared from the public eye. She took leave from work and turned off her phone. She spent her mornings at a public range on the outskirts of town, working quietly through different firearm platforms, revolvers, semi-automatics, long-range rifles. The muscle memory returned quickly, but she knew it wouldn't be enough. Ryan's strength wasn't just skill, it was range diversity, high-pressure conditions, and stage presence. On the 4th day, a black SUV pulled up. A tall man in military posture stepped out wearing a ball cap low over his eyes. Commander Tyler Morgan, a former SEAL who had served with Logan. "Word gets around fast," he said, holding out a small case. "I figured you might need help with the Macmillan TAC 338. Sarah blinked. "You know about that?" "Everyone knows about that," he said. "Ryan's planning to use it in the final station. But Logan trained with it too, and he wrote everything down." Inside the case was Logan's range log, a collection of wind drift formulas, distance charts, and grip notes. Sarah's hands trembled as she flipped through it. Commander Morgan trained her relentlessly. He corrected her grip. He explained barrel harmonics. He showed her how to read wind by watching grass move at 100 yards. Every session ended the same way: don't shoot like Ryan. Shoot like Logan taught you. The Elite Shooters Club had never seen anything like it. What was supposed to be a private showdown had turned into a regional spectacle. The board opened the event to the public. Cameras lined the walls. Journalists milled near the parking lot. The duel between the celebrity champion and the quiet accountant had captured Boston's imagination. Ryan arrived first, flanked by sponsors' media teams and his trademark swagger. He wore gear embroidered with his initials and the Remington logo. Every move was calculated, every nod, every glance choreographed for the cameras. Then Sarah walked in. No entourage, no logos, just a navy button-down fitted jeans and a worn duffel bag slung over one shoulder. The room quieted. Even the cameras paused. There was a strength in her silence, a presence not born of fame, but of depth. Madison met her privately before the match. "Sarah," she said quietly, "some of the stations. Something's off. Trigger pulls sight misalignments. I can't prove it, but be careful." Sarah nodded. "I figured he'd stack the odds. But Logan trained me for worse." As the competition began, the two opponents stood side by side, but they weren't equals. One had always been expected to win. The other, she was still being asked why she bothered showing up. And yet, as Sarah stepped to the first station and looked through the scope, she didn't see a target. She saw a promise. The competition began under the glare of floodlights and camera flashes. The Elite Shooters Club had transformed into a stadium of spectacle, with digital screens tracking every shot and commentators whispering into microphones for the live stream audience. Ryan Dalton stepped to the first station, like a man returning to his throne. His movements were elegant, almost choreographed loading, aiming, firing, all with the ease of repetition. Each shot was perfect, mechanical, impressive. The crowd nodded, many already convinced the outcome was inevitable. Sarah Collins, on the other hand, moved like a different kind of warrior. No theatrics, no swagger, just focus. She examined every station, adjusted calmly, and executed with the precision of someone whose hands had once trembled with grief but no longer did. Her movements were not flashy, they were pure. Station after station she kept pace. At Station 4, she noticed a subtle irregularity in the trigger pull, slightly heavier than standard. She didn't complain. She simply adjusted, recalling Logan's handwritten note. "If the gun changes, don't change yourself. Breathe around it." Her shot landed on target. By Station 7, murmurs began shifting. Ryan's supporters grew quieter. Spectators leaned forward. Madison Green, watching from the sidelines, noted the tension in Ryan's jaw, how it grew tighter with every station Sarah cleared. By Station 9, the scoreboard blinked in disbelief. Tied. The crowd buzzed. Everything would come down to the final test, the Macmillan TAC 338, Ryan's personal weapon of mastery. Sarah approached Station 10 with the calm of someone walking into a memory. The TAC 338 lay on the table, its matte black finish gleaming under the lights. She examined it carefully. Something felt off. Subtle scope shift, unfamiliar recoil padding. It had been altered. She said nothing. She reached into her bag and pulled out Logan's notebook, flipping quickly to the wind adjustment charts. She recalculated on the fly, her fingers tracing old ink, her pulse steady. Trust the training. Trust the math. The crowd quieted. Even the wind seemed to hush. Sarah exhaled slowly and pulled the trigger. The first round snapped through the silence and hit bullseye. Ryan's expression cracked. The second shot followed. Then the third. Bullseye. Bullseye. At the sixth shot, a sudden reflection of light bounced across her line of sight. Someone in Ryan's entourage had shifted intentionally, attempting to throw her off. She paused, blinked, steadied herself. Then she inhaled again, adjusted with the smallest of movements, and fired. Perfect. By the 10th shot, the room wasn't silent anymore. It was alive. A roar built slowly as her final round landed dead center. The screen flashed Sarah Collins. 10-10. The crowd erupted. Madison covered her mouth in disbelief. Veterans in the audience stood. Some saluted. Sarah didn't celebrate. She lowered the rifle, gently touched her wedding ring, and closed the notebook. Ryan approached face tight. "That was rigged," he said through clenched teeth. "She must have tampered with the scope but Madison stepped forward, tablet in hand. "Actually, Ryan, your team did the tampering." She tapped the screen. Footage played of Ryan's advisor entering the equipment room an hour before the event, unauthorized, swapping parts, adjusting settings. The room turned cold. Gasps spread across the crowd like wildfire. A respected journalist in the front row muttered, "Unbelievable." Ryan's face drained of color. He turned toward the board, but the members were already standing. One of them, Senator Hale, a Vietnam veteran, shook his head slowly. "You don't represent this club anymore." Sarah stood still through it all. She didn't gloat, she didn't smirk. She simply stood, a woman who had kept a promise and weathered the storm with quiet dignity. And that more than the shots was what everyone would remember. By morning, headlines exploded. Champion falls to unknown marksman in historic upset. Veteran widow exposes sabotage in high-stakes showdown. Ryan was placed under investigation for fraud and tampering. The club suspended him indefinitely. Sponsors pulled out. His public apology rang hollow too little too late. Meanwhile, Sarah politely declined every interview request. No morning shows, no podcasts, no book deals. Instead, she walked into the offices of the Veteran Support Foundation, where she had quietly accepted a new role instructor for adaptive marksmanship training. Her mission was no longer about proving anything, it was about giving back. She helped struggling veterans rediscover focus and calm through the art of shooting, not for sport, not for status, but for healing. Months later, at a ceremony held in Logan's hometown, the Logan Spector Collins Memorial Scholarship was announced, funded in part by court-mandated contributions from Ryan Dalton's legal settlement. Sarah was asked to say a few words. She stepped up to the podium, flanked by 6 of her students, veterans now thriving, not just surviving. "My husband once told me that the calmest hands often belong to those who've endured the greatest storms. I didn't fully understand it back then. Now I do." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Logan believed in purpose over power, in control over chaos, and in honoring what matters most, even when no one's watching. That's what I try to pass on. Behind her, a banner read, "Resilience is silent strength." As she stepped down, a former Marine with tremors in his hands saluted her. Another whispered, "You saved my life." Sarah smiled gently, twisted her wedding ring once, then looked up at the sky. Some victories don't need trophies. They leave legacies. If this story moved, you don't just scroll past, join us. At Deep Inside HQ, we bring powerful untold stories to life, spotlighting everyday individuals who rise with purpose, strength, and unshakable resolve. Subscribe now to follow more cinematic journeys like Sarah Collins, where courage outshines privilege and quiet voices rewrite history. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode that just might change the way you see the world. Share this video if you believe resilience deserves the spotlight, and drop a comment to let us know which moment left you speechless.